Welcome to the deep dive. I want you to take a moment and just, initiate a complete system reset on everything you think you know about the economics of mega sporting events.
Right, because we are taught from a very young age to view these massive spectacles through this highly specific, very rosy lens.
Yeah, exactly. A city lands a major global event, the politicians cut a ribbon, and the narrative is always exactly the same.
It's an unprecedented economic boom, a tidal wave of tourism dollars, a golden ticket for local businesses.
Right. But today, we're throwing that entire narrative out the window because, quite frankly, it is a complete fabrication.
It really is the great municipal myth of our time.
Yeah.
And, the reason it survived is because it sounds so fundamentally logical.
Right. Like, you bring 1 million people to a city, they have to eat, they have to sleep, they buy things, therefore the city gets rich.
Exactly. But the actual mechanical reality of how that money flows, or I guess more importantly, how it deliberately does not flow to the host city, tells a completely different story.
And the perfect case study is unfolding literally right in front of us. I mean, it's June 2026. The World Cup is finally here.
The matches are kicking off across North America as we speak.
Yeah, but instead of an economic windfall, what we're actually witnessing is a classic hollow host situation.
Hollow host, yeah, that's the perfect term for it.
Right, because the host cities are doing all the heavy lifting, taking on all the incredible logistical burdens, but the center of that promised economic boom has been completely hollowed out.
The disparity between the organization running the tournament and the cities physically hosting the games is just staggering. I mean, we're looking at a dynamic where the host shoulders nearly all the tangible risk.
While the governing body just vacuums up the reward.
Precisely.
So, to uncover the mechanics of this, we're using an incredible bombshell investigation from ProPublica. And our mission for this deep dive is to look at the staggering financial risks for cities hosting the tournament.
Which huge.
Oh, massive. We are going to examine how places like Houston, Texas, are quietly taking on hundreds of millions of dollars in costs, managing massive logistical nightmares, while FIFA, the organization, actually putting on the event projects a cool $11 billion in profit.
$11 billion. I mean, let that sink in.
It's wild.
And the architecture of how they achieve that profit margin while leaving local municipalities holding the bag is nothing short of a masterclass in aggressive economics.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because to understand how a host city ends up empty-handed while the organizers walk away with billions, you really have to look at the underlying business model FIFA has perfected.
Right.
I want you to think of FIFA not just as a global sports organization, but as the ultimate aggressive platform monopoly.
Oh, like a massive tech company.
Exactly like a tech company. They build a closed ecosystem. In this scenario, FIFA completely controls what we can call the monetization layer.
Right. They own the rights to every single thing that actually prints money.
Yes. They control the ticket sales, the luxury suites, the massive global television broadcast rights, the international corporate sponsorships. All the pure profit centers are locked down tightly in their proprietary layer.
And they guard that monetization layer fiercely. By design, none of that top-tier revenue trickles down to the municipal layer.
But here is the genius, or I don't know, maybe the tragedy of their model. They force the user, in this case the host city, to pay all the server and maintenance costs.
Right, the real-world infrastructure.
Yeah, the host city is the one that has to pay for the massive stadium upgrades just to fit a soccer pitch. The host city pays for the overwhelming police details and the security apparatus. The host city manages the transportation logistics, the street closures, the fan festivals.
So the platform takes the profit, and the user pays for the privilege of running the software.
Exactly.
What's fascinating here is how drastically this model has shifted over time. If we contrast the reality of 2026 with the last time the United States hosted the Men's World Cup back in 1994, it is like night and day.
Oh, really? How different was it?
Completely different. Alan Rothenberg, who was the president of U.S. Soccer in 1994 and is actually currently on the Los Angeles Host Committee, he pointed out just how one-sided this new arrangement is.
Okay.
Back in 1994, U.S. Soccer actually covered the security bills. Cities were not left holding the bag for policing.
Wow. That's a huge expense.
Massive.
Yeah.
But more importantly, cities actually got a slice of the game day revenue back then. They got a share of the money made from selling food, drinks, and merchandise right at the matches.
Wait, so in 1994, the cities actually got to keep the bar tab?
Basically, yeah.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, if you are hosting the party and cleaning up the mess, you should at least get a cut of the beer sales. So how restrictive is the 2026 deal by comparison?
It is entirely restrictive. In 2026, cities get zero game day revenue from tickets, zero from concessions, zero from merchandise, zero from parking.
Literally zero.
Zero. FIFA even restricted cities from selling tickets or suites in exchange for corporate sponsorships, which is, traditionally the primary way local organizers generate revenue to cover their upfront costs.
Bro.
The terms are so ironclad that cities are essentially locked out of monetizing their own taxpayer-funded stadiums on game day.
That is wild. No
Yeah.
wonder some cities looked at the fine print and panicked. I mean, Chicago, for example.
Right. Chicago is a great example.
They have the stadiums, the transit, the hotels. They're built for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But they looked at the math during the bidding process and flat out withdrew. You just said, no thanks.
Yeah.
Which, that sounds like political suicide for a mayor to walk away from a
Yeah.
global event. How bad was the math for them to actually say no?
Bad enough that they realized the prestige just wasn't worth the impending budget crisis. And they weren't the only ones to see the red flags. Look at Foxborough, Massachusetts. Local officials there realized the massive financial liability they were taking on and literally threatened to withhold permits for the matches until local organizers agreed to pay a $7.8 million security bill in advance.
You're kidding. They held the permits hostage.
They did. They completely refused to be left chasing reimbursement after the circus left town.
Good for them. But, okay, if the local government isn't making money on the beer, the parking, or the tickets, how are they paying the cops? Who is actually footing the bill for the stadium upgrades and the street closures?
That is the multi-million-dollar question, and the answer is sitting right in your wallet.
Ouch. Taxpayers.
Exactly. This brings us to a fundamental economic concept that explains the entire mega event illusion, and that is cost externalization.
Cost externalization. Okay.
In the simplest terms, cost externalization happens when a business maximizes its profits by shifting its inherent expenses onto an outside party. So in this case, local and state taxpayers are essentially subsidizing a multi-billion-dollar foreign entity.
Wow. So FIFA keeps the revenues internal, but externalizes the costs of hosting onto the public.
Exactly.
It's like, imagine someone throws a massive catered party at your house, charges people at the door, keeps all the cash for themselves, and then hands you the bill for the cleanup, the broken windows, and the security guards.
Yeah.
That is what's happening to your tax dollars.
That is the perfect analogy. And, the justification from organizers is always the same. They say, well, the city gets the attention, the global spotlight.
Right, the exposure.
But here we have to look at the return on attention, or the ROA.
Okay, what's that?
ROA is a metric of how much those global eyeballs actually translate into local dollars. And for a host city in this arrangement, the ROA completely crashes.
Because they don't get a cut.
Right. Attention is only valuable if it converts to local spending, but FIFA builds a walled garden around the stadium. Because the money generated by that attention is vacuumed up by the organizers, it immediately leaves the local economy. It doesn't circulate. It is extracted, not invested.
Let's ground this in some hard numbers from the ProPublica investigation, specifically looking at Texas. Because Houston's host committee is actually run by an external nonprofit, not the city government itself.
Right. The nonprofit handles it.
Yeah, they are responsible for the logistics and the funding. And while they love to claim no direct city or county funds are used, they rely heavily on massive public subsidies from higher up the chain.
Subsidies from where, exactly?
Well, for instance, the federal government is throwing in $65 million just to help Houston pay for security. And that is just a fraction of a larger $625 million federal taxpayer investment in the World Cup across the country.
That's incredible.
Right. And on top of that, they're drawing tens of millions of dollars from the Texas Major Events Reimbursement Program.
Which means whether you live in downtown Houston or, say, a rural town hundreds of miles away, if you pay taxes in Texas, you are bearing a significant share of the costs for this event.
But surely state officials track the return on investment for these tax dollars, right? I mean, if you were handing out tens of millions from a reimbursement fund, there has to be a ledger somewhere showing that the state made that money back in increased sales tax revenue.
You would certainly hope so, but the ProPublica piece details just how impossible that actually is. The criticism of these subsidies is entirely bipartisan, actually.
Really? Both sides?
Yeah. You have Democrat Wendy Davis, who heavily criticized the program back in 2013, saying the state was handing these funds out, quote, like candy.
Wow.
And on the other side of the aisle, you have the conservative Texas Public Policy Foundation heavily criticizing the exact same subsidy program, stating its vision points to a fundamental misunderstanding of how economies actually work.
This isn't a small fund either. They have spent $263 million since 2015, subsidizing everything from Super Bowls to cutting horse competitions.
Cutting horse competition.
Yes. Let that sink in. Cutting horse competitions. But wait, how can state auditors fail to prove an economic impact? Can't they just look at the sales tax for the month of June and see a massive spike?
Well, they try to, but when state auditors dug into the numbers, they found that officials couldn't verify the number of out-of-town visitors stringently enough to ensure an economic benefit.
Because it all just blends together.
Exactly. The state looks at overall sales tax data, but that data doesn't tell you if a dollar came from a tourist here for soccer or a local resident just buying groceries. In fact, the most damning detail from the investigation is that for the last 40 subsidized events, state officials admitted that, quote, neither a positive nor negative impact is determinable.
They literally cannot prove it works.
No, they can't.
Because the underlying economic reality just kills the local revenue narrative. The ProPublica source points to two vital economic concepts that completely debunk the idea of a local boom. The first is the substitution effect.
Right. The substitution effect is crucial here. This is the reality that when locals spend money attending a World Cup match, they aren't generating new wealth for the city. They are simply substituting where they spend their fixed entertainment budget.
Right, let's walk through this. Imagine a local family has a $300 entertainment budget for the month.
Okay.
Normally, they might spend that at a local movie theater, a neighborhood restaurant, or a bowling alley businesses owned by people in the community who then pay local staff.
Right.
But during the World Cup, that family takes their $300 and spends it at the stadium fan zone.
Yeah.
That local theater loses out, and the family's money goes straight to the FIFA ecosystem and leaves town. No new money was created, it was just redirected away from local businesses.
Precisely. It's a zero-sum game locally. And the second concept is even more damaging to the local economy, and that's the crowd-out effect.
The crowd-out effect. Okay, explain that one.
Mega events like the World Cup actively displace regular, reliable, and highly profitable business. Let's look at the microeconomy of a local bar owner in downtown Houston.
Sure.
Normally, in a given week, Houston hosts massive business conferences, oil and gas trade shows, corporate events. These business travelers have expense accounts. They book hotel blocks, they rent cars, they take clients out for expensive steak dinners.
But then the World Cup comes to town. Hotel prices spike to $800 a night. Traffic is an absolute nightmare. And all those normal business travelers, they just stay away. The corporate convention cancels.
Exactly. And the soccer fans who replace them, they might drink a lot of beer, but they aren't dropping thousands on corporate dinners. They are packing 4 people into a single hotel room. So the local bar owner actually sees a dip in their high-margin revenue.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah, you aren't adding the World Cup on top of your normal economy. You are trading your normal, predictable economy for the chaos of the World Cup.
I love the quote from Kelly Dow, Houston's former finance director, who basically confirmed this. He noted that Houston is a giant economy, literally as big as some entire states.
Right.
So an event like the Super Bowl or the World Cup, as flashy as it seems, doesn't actually move the overall economy as much as normal, everyday factors like manufacturing or the energy sector. He called these big events just noise in the signal.
Noise in the signal, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, they don't actually move the needle for municipal budgets. If a city breaks even, they consider themselves incredibly lucky.
Which creates a profound cognitive dissonance for the public, because the math simply does not support the political narrative being shouted from the podiums.
Okay, I'm going to play devil's advocate here.
Oh, all right. Let's hear it.
Because if the local economic benefits are a myth, and the state cannot even prove a positive impact on tax revenue, why on earth do local politicians fight so hard and bid so aggressively to host these events?
That is the big question.
I mean, surely the global brand awareness, the sheer exposure of having billions of people watching a broadcast with your city's skyline in the background, surely that tourism exposure is worth the upfront cost for a city's long-term growth. I mean, I'm looking right here at a study released by FIFA and the World Trade Organization projecting a massive $47 billion economic impact across the U.S. from this tournament. $47 billion.
I have to forcefully push back on that, and so do the independent economists who actually study this stuff for a living.
Really, $47 billion sounds pretty official.
It sounds official, but Victor Matheson, a highly respected sports economist who has studied the economics of big sporting events for decades, called that $47 billion projection, quote, insanity.
Insanity, why?
Well, if you break down Matheson's math, it exposes exactly how absurd these projections are. To hit $47 billion, every single game in the tournament would need to generate $400 million in new economic activity.
Wait, $400 million per game. So unless every single fan is buying a used Honda Civic along with their hot dog, the math is literally impossible.
It is completely divorced from reality. Matheson broke it down even further. To hit those numbers, every single person walking into that stadium would have to drop roughly $5,000 to $7,000 locally. Not on tickets, which goes to FIFA, but locally.
That's ridiculous.
It gets worse. Matheson pointed out the most telling detail of all. FIFA is listed right on the front cover as an author and sponsor of a report that miraculously concludes FIFA is awesome for the economy.
Oh, of course they are.
He bluntly stated that the report is better thought of as a promotional press release rather than a serious piece of economic research.
And the data on the ground was already proving him right long before the first kickoff. I mean, the investigation noted that hotel prices in several host cities were actually dropping as the tournament neared.
Right, which is huge.
That is a massive indicator that fewer people plan to travel for the games than originally projected. The entire premise relies on wildly inflated assumptions tweaked by promoters just to drive up the total.
Which brings us to the real answer to your question about why politicians fight for this.
Okay, lay it on me.
Exposure is not a currency.
Mm-hmm.
You cannot pave roads or fund local schools with global brand awareness. This is just credential laundering for politicians who want to be seen on a global stage at the taxpayers' expense.
Credential laundering.
That's
What?
exactly what it is. They get the photo op, they get to cut the ribbon on a global broadcast, they get to rub shoulders with celebrities in the VIP suites, and the massive bill gets quietly passed down to the local taxpayer. It is a massive transfer of public wealth to private prestige.
But there's a missing piece here. If the math is this blatantly bad, taxpayers would riot. How do organizers convince the public to go along with it? How do you get regular people to foot the bill for a billionaire organization's party without massive pushback?
You hide the ledger. The entire system relies on an engineered lack of transparency.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We mentioned earlier that the host committees organizing these events locally.
Right.
The ones making the deals with the city and with FIFA are structured as nonprofits. That isn't just a quirky administrative choice. It is a deliberate legal shield. Because they are nonprofits, they generally dodge public disclosure laws.
Exactly.
The entities actually spending the public's money and making the logistical deals operate completely in the dark. It's like imagine paying a contractor to fix your roof with your own money, but they legally redact the price of the shingles and won't let you look in the attic to see the work.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it is part of a systemic, global effort to shield the reality of mega events from the people actually paying for them. FIFA actually enforces strict confidentiality clauses in their host city contracts.
They force them to keep it secret.
Yes. They claim the contracts are commercially sensitive and that it is standard business practice to withhold them for global events of this scale. But David Killier, a freedom of information expert cited in the investigation, puts it perfectly.
What did he say?
He calls it atrocious that taxpayers are kept in the dark about an event they are directly funding. The public is investing massive amounts of capital, and they are legally barred from seeing the receipts.
And the lengths cities will go to protect FIFA's secrets from their own citizens are just stunning. Out of all the host cities in the U.S., only a few, like Kansas City, New York, and New Jersey, Philadelphia, and Seattle, actually made their contracts available for the ProPublica review.
And what about the others?
Well, Houston and Dallas actually went to the Texas Attorney General asking for formal legal permission to keep their contracts hidden from public view.
Unbelievable.
They actively spent public resources fighting to keep taxpayers from seeing what they had signed on their behalf.
And, the ultimate insult is that even when the Attorney General ruled that Houston and Dallas had to release their contracts, the documents that were finally made public were heavily redacted.
Heavily redacted on the exact details the public needs to know.
Right.
They blacked out how much FIFA is paying to rent the publicly funded stadiums.
Yeah.
They hid the specific tax breaks that FIFA enjoys from the city.
Of course they did.
They redacted the amounts of corporate donations and, crucially, what benefits those local companies receive in return. The contracts outline broad responsibilities, like stating the city must provide world-class security and transportation, but they intentionally obscure the actual dollar figures attached to those massive efforts. It is a complete black box.
It is a black box by design,
Mhm.
because if the taxpayers could see the unredacted ledger, if they could see the exact staggering dollar amount of local taxes flowing out to prepare the city, contrasted with the absolute $0 flowing back in from game day revenues, the municipal myth would collapse overnight.
Instantly.
The secrecy is the only thing holding the entire economic narrative together.
So let's look at where that leaves us. We've taken a deep dive through the looking glass of mega sporting events. We've seen how the promised economic boom is a carefully constructed myth propped up by inflated press releases disguised as economic research.
Yep.
We've unpacked how FIFA operates as an aggressive platform monopoly, keeping all the monetization for itself while externalizing the massive operational costs onto the host cities.
Leaving them with the bill.
Exactly. We've looked at how state tax funds and federal subsidies are poured into a system that can't even prove a positive return on investment, suffering heavily from the substitution and crowd-out effects that actively hurt local businesses.
And finally, we've seen how the true financial toll is deliberately hidden behind heavily redacted contracts and nonprofit loopholes, keeping the taxpayer completely in the dark.
Right. It is a sobering reality check on how global power dynamics play out at the municipal level. The mechanisms of wealth extraction are hidden squarely behind the bright lights and the spectacle of the sport.
They absolutely are.
Which brings us to the ultimate reality of your position as a taxpayer in this dynamic. If a city takes all the financial risk, pays for the security, upgrades the infrastructure, handles the massive logistical headaches, and yet gets absolutely zero equity in the upside, is it a partnership or is it just extortion?
That is the question. And it raises an important thought for you to take with you long after the final whistle blows on this tournament.
Was that
The next time your city's leaders proudly step up to a podium to announce a major economic victory because they've landed a massive global sporting event, I want you to look around your neighborhood. Look at the roads, look at the schools, look at the local businesses, and ask yourself what local community programs or crucial infrastructure projects might be quietly losing their funding just to pay for a billionaire organization's security detail.